Hello, YouTube. All right, I'm going to give a brief explanation of what I think happened today. Yeah, it looks a little hindsight, but here's what I did. The only indicator I have is a indicator that I wrote that just kind of generally shows where buy and sellers are placing their large orders. So these things will tend to be representation of buyers. So in the morning, I believe it dipped down, and there I had multiple entries, a very large entry here. And that entry was filling for a larger trader. They do not buy in movements. So if you are buying here, what's happening is you are buying above this position who's filling in their algorithm that they fill in. The first place that we had volume was here, and that was an indication that you had somebody on the wrong side, allowing you to recognize this as a tradable entry with a retest of the high of the last range bar before the swift move, which is of course right here, and was retested there, and that was the best buy position for the day. This sell had a turn on it. I call these turns, or a short order, but it was lacking in an opposing trader. It was enterable. It had a manageable amount of risk. It did not trigger, in my opinion. It was not formed properly. This retest was the best entry. This drove to that. Then we got into a channel formula where the market is now turning upside down all the short sides and making the long side impossible to manage your risk. So what's important here is, one, the proper side, the buyers, after the origin entry, the one that started it all, they cannot measure and manage their risk. And if you can't measure your risk, you can't manage it. And that's important because a small amount of risk plus an opportunity of movement is an entry. And that's what leads to the buy side. Small risk plus opportunity for profit is entry. So as this entry occurred in the retest, you're able to manage your risk, measure your risk, which is important, and recognize the probable, retest of the gap open. We see these a lot after a range day. This isn't even me talking. This is just how people are. They know after a range, gap down, a lot of times, So that opportunity made for some form of an entry. I'm sure pretty much everybody on the planet, when they write stuff, they say, I want to reduce my risk and have maximum opportunity for profits. Now you can see into the close, this is ticking. I have this live today. I'm going to try and post it before it closes so that people don't say whatever. Anyway, next thing that's important is the short side has excellent opportunity, and this is for a channel, or I call them an inversion, but a channel. Yeah, the short side has excellent opportunity, but they cannot find the opportunity to run. So you see, as the buyers start to pile on their position, their line, they buy, and this is clearly, these are not the origin, the origin there, they started here, but as good traders start to pile their line on, they begin to control the market, and as the shorts try and fight against that, their opportunity is cut down, and then you have these types of problems. I found that this was probably the best place to trade for me. Intraday scalping. This doesn't affect tomorrow in the whatsoever. The opportunity was cut down, so it pushed back up to the high. And so this trade, you could manage your risk, but the opportunity was lacking, and that drove a lot of skepticism. I got into here, and I got out as I decided this was not a functioning, beautiful trade like I wanted it to be. And so into the close, you have a lot of buyers who are hoping for a sweeping, beautiful move up because it bounced off their average, and you have a bunch of sellers who have determined it is not going to occur. So you have a 1 to 0 ratio, which allows for movement in the market. This is what I call profit sharing really hard to trade trades that it's hard to manage your risk, but they lead to movement. Just basically shares all the profits of the buyers. They think they're still in a profitable trade, but they're actually now in a losing trade because it has begun cycling the wrong way. As it hits the buy average, when I say buy average, I mean the representation of all the buy orders, accumulative from the lowest one on. So if this pushes a new low, this starts over. As you see, the sellers had a sell average, and that created an area where it was conflicted. As they pushed a new high and tried to start a new line, they were able to create, a new average. And this sell average is the highest one on the day, and it is also leading to a good move. So this is, what it is. So I believe, for me, that there was a small scalp on the short side, and a majority of people were holding in long from the morning, and they had bought into the retest. I do not have any of my indicators to mark out buys and sells and retest. I just have the one to kind of give a generalization to help depict what I'm talking about. These lines will not play into effect tomorrow. They are not something to be traded. They are not advice. They are just a generalization of what I think in a code that I wrote, probably terribly, since it slows my computer down. I assume I have memory leaks everywhere. So going into the close here, I believe that you have to remember there's an order here, and I think this one actually matched up pretty well with this. A lot of people probably closed on the gap close, but a lot of times you see days like this with a gap close leads to a push up, something like that. And that was my assessment of today. Best trade was here, and a small scalp here, which led to a market being confused because the buyers would have closed and taken a small trade here and then push back up. And this is just some confusion. We're not going to see a whole lot of. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to push all the way down here or do anything that dramatic. Plus, to short here would be stupid because good traders don't trade in the move. They trade before in ranges and small, places where they can manage risk. Here, if you short this, you're going to have to stick your stop up here, and that is way too much risk. Just way too much risk, because this move at best isn't. You're not going to see a push out the low. So if you're a margin trader, intraday trader, now is not the time to be trading. If you were to have traded this, you should have been in already. And it is possible. It's just very difficult. Okay, so that's my assessment of today in 8 minutes.